One Piece Chapter 1191 has officially changed my perspective on a character I've been dogging on for years now. And on top of that, this chapter came with the confirmation of a massive fan theory that the One Piece community has been cooking on for the last 2 weeks. So let's dive into Chapter 1191 and break down all of these pivotal moments. We start this chapter off with a brand new color spread that says Soul Never Ages, and it features all of our straw hats in this 70s style groovy attire. I really like the art, but I don't have too much to add to it, so let's just jump right into the chapter. Chapter 1191, titled There's Still Loki. And it starts off with an incredibly rare internal monologue from Luffy. In this moment, he's actually reflecting on his abilities and what he needs to do. I really like to see him questioning what's going on in his reality, wondering how it's even possible that he's still alive, but knowing intuitively that if he left his Gear 5 form, he would surely die. These two small panels right here inherently show so much growth within Luffy and his control over Gear 5 overall. And it also hints to the fact that it is Gear 5 itself that is keeping him alive. But we'll dive more into that later in the chapter. Luffy rushes over to Gabon apologizing that he got hurt defending him, and Gabon retorts by saying that he wasn't defending Luffy, he was defending Elbaf. He tells Luffy that he's completely lost his hope in him. At this moment in the chapter, I was feeling like Gabon was still pushing his tough love kind of agenda on Luffy, but as we progress through this chapter, it seems like he keeps doubling down on this, so I'm not totally sure where Gabon's head is at right here. Luffy asks the big question, who the hell is it that they're fighting? And Gabon responds with the only thing he could call this person is a god. And this just continues to push the narrative that Elbaf has been heavy on, blurring the lines between gods and devils. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, when the Giants were describing what kind of god Nika was, they were arguing about if he's a god of liberation, destruction, or laughter. And just a few chapters ago, we had Imu literally saying, what's the difference between a god and a devil? This moment just continues to push a narrative through line that Oda has been weaving in this story, showing that to be a god or a devil is simply a matter of perspective. And while Gabon and Luffy are having this conversation, we jump to the underworld where we see that Imu is laying on his back incredibly bloody. This to me shows that Scopper Gabon genuinely did something with that attack. For the vast majority of the time that Imu has been physically on Elbaf, he really hasn't taken much damage from the battles that he's been in. For the most part, it seems like this damage is coming from him simply existing here in Elbaf in this form, just like from the moment he entered Elbaf while coughing up blood. So the Scopper Gabon and overall the Roger Pirate upscale during this battle is ridiculous. I think the One Piece community as a whole has been underestimating just how strong Roger and company got. But this particular moment with Gabon showing against Imu, especially in his old age, is a massive accomplishment to say the least. It is very interesting seeing Imu showing regret at not killing everybody he encountered on God Valley. And it must be an incredibly frustrating situation for Imu at this point, because it seems like every mistake he's made in his 800 years of ruling is coming back to bite him in this moment here on Elbaf. And it's really interesting to see a god showing this level of regret. And I think this also just leads to what Imu's ultimate downfall will be, and that is obviously his hubris. The fact that he's believed that he is infallible this entire time, and that hubris alone has landed him on his back in the underworld of Elbaf in this moment. So this pushes Imu to yet another transformation. But before we get to see it, we make a hard cut to the Owl Library. And I hate to say it, this might be the part of the chapter I am the most excited for. I have been harping on how important Biblo is from the moment we met him in this story. Keep in mind, one of the only things we know about Biblo is that he predates giant memory. And to put that into perspective, Yarul is 408 years old right now. And if he or people he has known has no memory of Biblo, that puts Biblo closer to the Void Century or even further back. And for Yarul, as well as anyone he may have known in his lifetime to not know anything about Biblo, that possibly puts them close to the Void Century, if not farther. Biblo knows so much. Not only is Biblo really old, but he is an owl watching over the Library of Ohara. He has been protecting some of the most coveted information in the entire story of One Piece. And finally, we have put Chopper back in the room with Biblo to actually have a conversation with him. And Biblo seems like he wants to yap. And by the looks of it, Chopper is surprised by what he's hearing. So what is it that Biblo's trying to tell Chopper? Well, I feel like the Occam's razor theory for this is that Biblo knows some kind of way to hurt Imu. Biblo may have been around for Imu's inception, and with his vast amount of knowledge, he might be able to help us deal with the threat that is actively destroying Elbaf. He could also have a better understanding of Chopper's fruit than he himself does. I feel like the vast majority of the One Piece community is on the theory that Chopper is the forest god. Shout out Monkey D. Quell for this one. It's very possible that Biblo could be the one to explain to Chopper what his true abilities are. We've already seen on Elbaf that Chopper is a hard counter to Domi Reversi, quite literally slapping the demons out of these giants who are flipped. So maybe Biblo can expand on that and help Chopper understand the ability he truly holds. And this could lead to Chopper being the linchpin that gets Emu off of Elbaf. But of course, we still have the proverbial time limit that Emu is on right now, as well as the potential for Zoro or Sanji or both of them taking out a Holy Knight, that weakening him enough to force him off the island. And we still have one more option with Princess Shuri and whatever the hell is going to happen with her whenever she wakes up. Cutting back to Emu flying back up to the branch with Luffy and Scopper as if he's freaking Superman. And we get to see this new transformation. And I can't help but feel like it looks like super buff Trunks. It's like Emu's stronger older brother. I find it really interesting that the design feels a lot more like an ancient giant, very specifically oars. The larger set of horns he now has heavily represents the way oars were angled out and then up. And then we also have the 3 skulls going across his chest that were originally on the belt of oars. We can also see that Emu seems to have a curse mark on his arm as well, just like his Holy Knights. Now on the surface, this makes a lot of sense because of course Emu would also need an abyss mark to be able to travel through the abyss. Could this possibly mean that the entity that we're seeing right here is actually another vessel for Emu and not Emu themselves? With how much this looks like oars, this could potentially be the body of an old ancient giant that Emu subjugated or defeated. It's very possible that Emu themselves are still actually that shadowy figure that we see in Marijois. And for them to be able to descend to the lower lands to walk among the mortals, they must take a mortal form, and that mortal form could be a form that they have taken over their years while in power. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but it is curious that when Emu appears in their mortal form for the very first time, they take the form of an ancient giant. But all of that being said, this form is much more demonic and very oppressive. It's also interesting to note that the Halo of Eyes is now also wrapping around both of his wrists, and I wonder if that's giving him access to even more weapons, or if it's just an aesthetic placement. I will say I'm a bit disappointed that this chapter didn't show us really any new abilities while in this form. For all intents and purposes, Emu's a little bit bigger, a little bit more scary, but hasn't done anything different than swinging a sword and shooting stigma bombs at people. But nevertheless, in this moment, Emu actually glazes Scopper Gabon for only losing one arm in that attack. And as Emu continues to yap, we have Gabon telling Luffy that it's time for him to pack up and go. Of course, Luffy refuses, but Gabon says, "You're a dead man walking. What can you even do at this point?" And as Emu comes in to land the finishing blow on both Gabon and Luffy, we get a savior that I never expected. And to be honest, I'm a fool for underestimating him, because Hajrudin comes out of nowhere with a gun gear punch. A punch that we have seen before, back in Dressrosa when he landed it against Mach Weiss, who was actively 10,000 tons. So the power behind this punch back in Dressrosa was ridiculous, and it should inherently be much stronger now. And that being said, we see it to be quite effective on the strongest opponent in the verse. This punch sends Emu flying, but Emu sends his stigma bullets right back at Hajrudin as well. But again, we have some Hajrudin upscale with his battle IQ, because he says, "I'm not gonna fall for that again, you already hit me with that once." And I have to formally apologize to my man right here, because I was drastically downscaling him in the last couple months talking about this arc in general. Boy, was I wrong. Hajrudin is set up to be the future king of Elbaf right alongside Loki. And while obviously this arc has been very Loki intensive with a lot of Loki glazing included, we can't forget our boy Hajrudin. And I did just that, so I must apologize. Hajrudin, you're a real one and you deserve to stand up here with the big boys. Gabon doubles down on both of them, saying, "Y'all need to get out of here. This guy is immortal. You're not going to be able to do anything against him." And this next panel is probably the most contentious moment of this entire chapter. We see Luffy struggling to heal his wounds up, but oddly enough, it seems as if it's working. Luffy is slowly blowing up like a balloon, like he is when he's full of food. Gabon continues to tell him that you can't keep fighting with these injuries, it's impossible, and Luffy says, "No, I'm healing right now." He goes on to say, "I made sure to have a full stomach before this fight so I can definitely heal up." And Gabon responds with, "What the hell is this logic?" And we all know if you ever question the logic of Luffy, that virtually guarantees that thing will happen, because Luffy avoids logic at all costs. He inherently defies it. But before we can finish this conversation, we see 2 more bombs coming from Emu. Hajrudin picks up a now incredibly inflated Luffy and Gabon and tanks yet another direct attack from Emu. Now, I have been harping quite a bit on the fact that damage in this arc seems to be virtually pointless. Anytime Emu lands an attack, it's something that you can easily heal from and bounce back from. And I won't deny that this moment continues to perpetuate those issues. But at the same time, Oda was so deep in his bag for the artwork for our boy Hajrudin. And if we're being honest, I love to see him able to step up to this degree. Does this moment make perfect sense for the amount of time that we've spent with Hajrudin and what we've seen from him? Maybe not. But does it narratively make sense for where Hajrudin needs to end up by the end of this story? Yes, it does. Gabon once again is begging for them to leave this fight, which at this point I think is a bit ridiculous because obviously Emu is going to be able to catch them. There's no amount of running away from Emu that they could possibly do right now. And this is the point of the chapter where I start to get a little frustrated with Gabon, because on one side I completely understand his fears. Obviously we're dealing with what he perceives and what most of us perceive as a god, someone who is truly unstoppable. So I get it, Gabon thinks that we need to just duck and run. But on the same side, there's no way Emu is gonna let them get away at this point. And Hajrudin is ready to stand on business regardless. He is a giant of Elbaf, and the giants of Elbaf do not step down from defending their country. And he goes on to say, even if I die, it doesn't matter because there's still Loki. This shows so much character growth between Hajrudin and Loki. If we jump back to earlier in this arc, you remember that Hajrudin absolutely hated him. Hajrudin believed all the lies that have been told about Loki, or at least the story that has been told to the country of Elbaf. And up until Luffy showed up trying to free Loki and giving Loki an opportunity to tell his side of the story, Hajrudin had never trusted his brother. And in this moment, Hajrudin is ready to die and leave the entire country in the hands of Loki. The amount of growth between these two characters in these last 30 chapters is unbelievable. And speak of the devil, Loki pulls up as well. I can complain again about damage not really mattering, but this epic brother team up is worth it. And as this whole chapter has been predicting, Luffy himself also ends up getting healed enough to be able to join the fight as well. I would like to point out that Luffy is not 100% healed, and he also did not heal himself up from going and getting more food. He literally just healed up through his power of imagination. By Luffy's logic, since he entered this battle with a full stomach, that is enough for him to be able to heal himself up when he needs to. And this is yet another reason why I also refuse to engage with leak culture around One Piece. Because this past week, the leakers were legitimately saying that Luffy healed himself up by eating, and also that he healed himself up to 100%. If you look at this panel right here, you can obviously tell that Luffy is not at 100%. He is still bleeding profusely. He's just made it to a point where he's able to enter this fight again. And this is just yet another reason why it will always be better to experience this story the way it's meant to be experienced, on the panel on Sundays when it officially comes out with official translations. But this chapter ends with an epic named attack. We get triple General Gokoku sovereignty. And as we can see, this is a three-way attack between Loki, Hajrudin, and Luffy. Now on one side, I'm a little bit disappointed that Luffy joined this fight because I would have loved this just to be an epic attack between brothers. They've never fought together like this before, so this is a really big moment for them. But at the same time, Luffy is the sole reason that they even have a relationship at all right now, so it does make sense for him to be right in the middle because he is the glue that brings everybody together. That is Luffy's superpower, just like Mihawk said all those chapters ago. And with that, we wrap up another epic chapter and begin to theorycraft. And the first topic I would like to tackle is the Luffy imagination healing topic because I think there's a lot to be said about this. And first off, I was against this. If you look about 2 weeks ago, I was saying that I did not think this was gonna happen. I did not expect Luffy to get legitimate healing powers out of Gear 5. And if I'm being completely honest, I've turned around quite a bit on that concept because it's really not a stretch at all to think that Luffy could just imagine himself healing up. But I do think that this new power has to come with a heavy set of limits. If Luffy is able to just simply spam imagination healing at all times and get back to 100%, I feel like that could really lower the stakes in a story that already has a heavy deficit of stakes in the first place. But that being said, I'm not sure if it'll ever be something that gets him back to 100% or not. And I do think that there's more to this. We've already been told that zone devil fruits have a natural affinity to heal faster than your average devil fruit user. And on top of that, Luffy's rubber body tends to reject quite a bit of damage in the first place. Luffy is one of those characters that simply has all the abilities necessary to make healing as easy as humanly possible, while adding on top of that the power of imagination. And if we're being honest, it truly just boils down to Luffy believing in himself. Luffy believes that he can heal up enough to join this fight again and protect the people he cares about. And as we've seen time and time again, Luffy's devil fruit itself loves to save him. I think one of the most important things Luffy said in this chapter is the fact that if he leaves this Gear 5 form, then he will surely die. While in Gear 5, anything is possible. But when he comes back to reality, he also has to face the consequences. And I think it makes a lot of sense that Luffy will have to face consequences for healing himself in Gear 5 as well. I heard Joyboy Theories here on YouTube mention this while talking about the imagination healing abilities of Luffy, and I think he was pretty spot on with the fact that anytime Luffy is truly healing himself in the Gear 5 form, he's probably burning some level of his lifespan. With it being a Zone Devil Fruit, he is literally giving his life to that Devil Fruit. And at the core of this story, these fruits are inherently devils in some capacity. Eating a Devil Fruit is like making a deal with the devil, and in almost all instances, you have to sell your soul. So if Luffy's Gear 5 healing is going to have any negative consequences for him, I think this would be the best way to portray it, making it to where this is not an ability that he can simply rely on, but it is something in his bag of tricks if things get really bad. And this also begs the question, could Joyboy fully heal himself? It seems as if Joyboy was a master of this Devil Fruit, and obviously through the battle with Imu, we know that Joyboy was significantly stronger than Luffy is today. So does that also mean that Joyboy was able to heal himself up significantly more? Or did Joyboy get to a point where he didn't even have to take that damage? Is it possible that Joyboy even lost because he had to spam this ability one too many times? Again, shout out Joyboy Theories over here on YouTube talking about this. He has a great video going in depth about the imagination healing that Luffy has, but I just want to touch on these few topics for this video. So now we must ask the question, what's going to happen next? Well, in classic One Piece fashion, I would expect us to jump to one of the other three situations we currently have going on Elbaf. Obviously with Zoro fighting Sommers, Sanji fighting Killingham, and all of the things going on with Princess Shuri, Brook, and the rest of the crew. As much as I'm a Zoro glazer, I'm much more interested in seeing Sanji unlock Conqueror's Haki during this battle with Killingham, and it feels all but inevitable at this point. And it would also be really interesting to see if the damage that Imu has started taking here on Elbaf is affecting the Omen boost that he's given to Killingham and Sommers. Is it possible that while Sanji is fighting Killingham and Luffy, Loki, and Hajrudin are fighting Imu, whenever Imu gets injured, Killingham might have a little dip in his abilities, creating openings for Sanji to potentially get the killing blow that he needs? And the same goes for Zoro. We know at this point in the story that killing a Holy Knight does injure Imu to some degree, so maybe it works in the reverse order as well. That could also be why the Gorosei were so scared for Imu to leave the Holy Land in the first place. Not only are their lives directly connected to Imu, but they might also feel the pain that Imu experiences while on the mainland. But we still have to wonder if Hajrudin, Loki, and Luffy will even be able to do anything against this newly buffed Imu. Like I said earlier, we really did not get a very good show of this new form that Imu just appeared in, so we really don't know what kind of power boosts it comes with. And if we're being honest, the form Imu was in before this fight was already more than Elbaf could handle, so him powering up yet again is even scarier. Can the three of them even do anything about this? So does that bring us back to one of our earlier theories that Zoro and Sanji are going to have to win their fights to weaken Imu enough for these three to land a definitive blow and get him off the island? Of course, we do fall back on the other two options that have been looming above us. Option one being the proverbial time limit that Imu has been on this entire time. While this is yet to be confirmed, it was so heavily implied in the first few chapters that Imu appeared on Elbaf that it feels like a solidified fact. And yet we've watched Imu continue to fight opponent after opponent and power up even farther. Now granted, Oda doesn't really focus on how much time has passed in the manga, so we really don't know how long all of these situations have taken. But that being said, it feels like whatever clock Imu has been on should be getting very close to running out. And then there's also the concept of what the hell will happen if and when Princess Shuri wakes up. We still are asking that question, and genuinely I have no idea what direction it's going to take. Obviously she does still have a Holy Knight mark, so in theory she should be able to be controlled by Imu, which means when she wakes up she will not be a good guy even if she wants to be. But they've also planted the seeds of her eyes having some kind of interesting ability. And my favorite theory around that is that it will give her the ability to have some kind of excessively powerful observation haki, seeing far into the future, or even be able to prophesize things. If somehow that ability awakens once she wakes up, maybe she could tell the Straw Hats exactly what they need to do to stop Imu and get him off this island. So that's all I've got for chapter 1191. As always, I want to hear from you guys. What are your favorite theories right now, and what are your predictions for the future? And if you would like to be there for my initial reactions to these chapters, I have streams every Sunday for One Piece's new episode and manga chapter. I've also got a Patreon where I upload that full live stream so you can see all the theory crafting I do with the community in the moment. And of course, we have a Discord where you can theory craft with me all week long. So make sure to lock in with me, and as always, tell the people you love them, touch grass, drink water, and I will see you for the next chapter breakdown. Peace.